You want to be an unbelievable survival story? That guy that got stuck in that fucking cave or whatever, but he actually like lived. Then he would be on here, you know. But unfortunately, they buried his body with the. It was horrible.
And the temperature
Reapers, what's this good? It's your boy Laser. You're into the scary action, man. You know the scary content, so I can deliver that. 5 unbelievable survival stories, guys. Motherfuckers be getting frozen in goddamn Mount Everest and still somehow survive. We're dashing the scary content. You enjoy the scary content? You want scary these features? Please up and you subscribe to the notification bell. I go stream DM on Twitch. I'll stream music. Side boy. Let's dive straight in this video. Top 5.
Welcome to 5 incredible stories of human survival. These individuals have pushed the boundaries far beyond human expectations and lived to tell the tale. Let's begin with the awesome
That's my favorite channel yet, too, bro.
Steve 𝐭𝐚. In 1982, Steve took part in a transatlantic race which started in England and ended in Antigua. Unfortunately, Steve's boat became mercy to the giant waves and he was out of the race. He fixed up his 20-foot homemade boat and decided to complete the race on his own back. On the 29th of January 1982, Steve set out from the Canary Islands, destination the Caribbean. For the first week,
you know what I treat YouTube as, bro? I treat it like my diary, man. I'm just telling y'all everything about me, and I make money doing this. I love this. Content creation's the way to go, bro. I'm trying to put so many people on with this shit.
He was calm with steady wind. Food supplies were good, and he was enjoying his solitude surrounded by ocean. After a week of ideal conditions, the weather took a turn. The wind picked up and a storm was brewing. Steve decided to sit it out till morning when suddenly a massive ear-shattering noise ripped through the boat. Steve to this day does not know what it was but believes it must have been a whale. The boat began to fill with water and he was going down. Steve had to evacuate or he would be pulled down into the depths of the ocean. He managed to inflate and board the emergency raft, but all his food supplies were still on the sinking boat. His survival instinct kicked in and he reboarded the sinking boat to retrieve his supplies. All he managed to collect was a cabbage, a box of eggs and a tin of peanuts, barely a day's supply. As morning grew, Steve was lost, alone, and had no way of getting help. He wrapped himself in his drenched sleeping bag, causing his sore, salty skin to erupt with boils. His back, knees and bum were also covered with cuts and bruises. He had 8 pints of water that was in his emergency raft and rationed himself to a mouthful every 6 hours. Days passed and water supplies were low. Steve managed to makeshift a solar still that produced a small amount of fresh water, but food was non-existent apart from a few fish he managed to catch. After 2 weeks adrift, he spotted a boat. After firing several flares, he watched the boat disappear into the distance. 40 days in, the raft became a battle in itself. Constant punches kept Steve exhausted.
Bro's like in like a fucking tent. What the fuck? Look at him, bro. Oh, man, he's seen it all. Look at his eyes. He's got that war face. You know, there's before and after war pictures. That's my boy right there.
He had no meat on his body and his cuts were infected and reaching his nerve endings.
Yeah, like, what was he even supposed to drink? You can't drink the ocean. You can die from that shit. What, did he drink the fucking his own fluids? Ugh, disgusting.
Sending horrific pains all over his body. 76 days in and his body and mind was shutting down, but he had been throwing inedible fish cuts overboard and a crowd of birds were following him. Miraculously, a group of fishermen saw the birds from a distance and thinking there must be fish nearby, set out to see what was going on. They found Steve, and after 67 days at sea, he had lost over a third of his body weight, and it would take him 6 weeks before he could walk again, but Steve 𝐭𝐚 was finally safe.
Number 4.
In the early morning of May 26, 2013, 𝐂𝐚 had just gotten up and was about to go into the bathroom. Suddenly, his ship was hit by what a spokesman later called a sudden ocean swell. 𝐂𝐚 could only watch helplessly as his daily life turned upside down. The tugboat capsized and plummeted 100 feet below the surface, with him still inside. Trapped in the dark abyss with no one else in sight and wearing nothing but his boxers, 𝐂𝐚 waded through the ship's corridors, which was slowly filling with icy water. He managed to locate a source
I
of...
could feel the water just touch my goddamn... shaky.
light, some Coca-Cola and a few tools, and he made it to a relatively safe corner of the sunken ship. 𝐂𝐚 ended up bunking in a 4-foot air pocket under the surface, holding back the water as best he could and stacking mattresses as the cold water rose.
I've seen this video, bro. This motherfucker was down like he was trapped for like goddamn what, 3 days? Imagine being stuck in the ocean 3 days, bro. Just being stuck in this dark area. Like, apparently he was like seeing things, he was hallucinating, everything. That's horrible. Fuck. For me, I would literally go insane the first day. I probably wouldn't I would probably just pass out, and then I would swim in my own. Like, I can't imagine he probably was pissing, shitting right here, bro. That's disgusting. But like, what else was he supposed to do? And then he was fine, but he had like a whole story on how he doesn't like being like stuck in the water anymore. I think it gave him a whole ass PTSD. I don't know.
Right. To make things worse, sharks and barracudas soon started roaming the ship's interiors. He could hear them fighting for the remains of his shipmates in other rooms and swimming in the water just below him. He had no food, and the salt water and the bumps from the accident were wearing his skin raw. But miraculously, the lethal cold water aided 𝐂𝐚 by absorbing the deadly carbon dioxide he was breathing out, so CO2 never built up to toxic levels. When a recovery team was sent down, they expected no survivors, and 𝐂𝐚 gave a diver the shock of a lifetime, as the second he heard human sounds, he announced his presence by pounding the wall with a hammer. The divers fled and returned with backup, and after almost 3 days of desperately hoping, praying, and reminiscing about family and friends, 𝐂𝐚 was finally brought to the surface in a decompression chamber by salvage divers. He had no idea, however, how much time had passed, but made a full recovery. In 1985, Joe Simpson and Simon Yates successfully climbed the Suala Grande, a 2,000-foot mountain in the Andes of Peru. Their ascent was a great success. They completed the mountain on time, and the weather conditions were looking good. But this story of survival is during the descent.
Oh, it's the 𝐶𝐚land. The 𝐶𝐚land. It's a white like me, vanilla. Oh, I would kill to just hike down here, man.
They were both exhausted and decided to rest up for the night and continue the following morning. As morning rose, things were already looking bad. Simon's fingers had turned black from frostbite, and their supplies.
I played a game on this. That was so fun. Those Roblox Antarctica games. I beat that game like 50 million times. Oh, look at this fucker.
Been used up. They were both roped to each other and began climbing down a sheer section of ice. Suddenly, Joe slipped and was free falling. He smashed into the base of a cliff, and his tibia drove itself into his right knee joint. Somehow, Simon managed to drive his ice axe into the mountain to prevent them both from falling. They were now 19,000 feet up and could not see each other at either ends of the rope. Simon and Joe both knew they would not get down together, but Joe knew Simon needed to cut the rope in order to save himself. But he didn't. He began slowly lowering Joe down the mountain. He would descend a small distance and then lower Joe down, refusing to leave him behind. Suddenly, Joe began sliding down the mountain fast. He shouted up to Simon, but his words went unheard. He was now free falling in the air and came to a halt. Joe was now dangling 15 foot below the lip of a cliff with over 100 foot of darkness below him. Simon was now hanging on with the full weight of Joe below him. Simon used his penknife to cut the rope, as he knew they would both die if they stayed there. Joe was now falling into the dark hole. He hit
Joe, your mama, Joe. Look at his face, it's all molten up. His face is all shriveled and burnt up. Ooh.
He hit the ground and realized he wasn't dead, but was sliding into an ice glacier. He came to a stop and realized he had no food and no way of letting Simon know he was alive, and had a completely shattered right leg. He knew the only way out was if he slid further into
his lip. It has like a crack. Damn, bro. Can't imagine how dry his lips are. Just imagine kissing him on the lips. You're just kissing straight fucking melting paint. Expired like cement, just breaking.
Glacier, hoping to find an exit at the bottom of the mountain. Joe promised himself there and then that he was going to get out alive, and kept crawling down the glacier, when suddenly he seen a light at the bottom. Finally, he reached it and was amazingly at the bottom of the mountain. He could see footprints in the snow, which he knew was...
He's got that camo for the 10. Wow. I would kill to do this, man. Why do I feel like the oxygen like right here is really bad? I don't know. The oxygen looks like it's horrible. Whatever.
Simon's. He crawled and crawled for hours, following Simon's footsteps. Back at base camp, Simon was in his tent when he heard howling outside. He went out to have a look and could see Joe crawling towards him. That feeling must have been absolutely incredible. They both returned home and recovered well, knowing that if Simon hadn't have cut the rope, they both would have died there and then. In 2003, 28-year-old Aaron Ralston was cycling through a national park in Utah. He leaves his bike and begins to hike the rest.
The first mistake living in Utah. Bro, how do they not have a... You know, an unbelievable survival story, bro? One time I was, I talked about this at, like, a fucking soccer or football tryout. I started talking about, GTA, the strip clubs. And I literally made a whole video about this, random, I know. And then I was, you wanna know the survival story? I was just me trying not to shake for, like, the whole 50-minute tryout practice. I was just shaking because I remember the people, they were like, okay, we're going to talk to you after. And I was like, what?
Rest of his journey. Coming to a 65-foot drop, he decides to rappel down, as he has come prepared with all his climbing gear. During the rappel, he reaches a ledge that has a large boulder below it. Just 9 feet from the canyon floor, Aaron knows he can reach the boulder and then drop down onto the floor. He lowers himself onto the boulder and carefully grabs hold of it, lowering himself down. Suddenly the boulder shifts and he immediately falls. He raises his right arm in an attempt to protect his head. He comes to a halt. Utter silence fills the canyon and he feels a deep burning in his right arm. The boulder which he was standing on is now pinning his arm against the canyon face. The pain hits him like a lightning bolt, but he knows he needs to act fast whilst he is filled with adrenaline. He tried pulling his arm out with his left arm, but it's stuck. He only has 1 liter of water left and consumes a third of it in one go. Luckily his arm is not bleeding. He uses the file on his penknife to try and chip away at the rock, but to no success. As night falls...
You want to be an unbelievable survival story? That guy that got stuck in that fucking cave or whatever, but he actually like lived, then he would be on here, you know? But unfortunately, they buried his body with the... It was horrible.
And the temperature drops. Aaron is struggling. 3 days later, he is still there, and he knows he will have to amputate his arm in order to survive. He drives his penknife into his forearm, but can't cut the bone. He gives up and accepts the fact that he is going to die. He begins to hallucinate. He carves the 30th of April into the rock as he does not expect to last another day. On day 6, Aaron said he had an epiphany. He has this idea that if he can get enough tension on the bone, he could snap it in two, and then all he would need to do is cut the remaining flesh. Without any hesitation, he yanks his right arm and hears a crack echo through the canyon. For the next hour, Aaron cuts through his skin and tendons using a blunt penknife. He comes to the nerves.
Blunt pen? What? What, he hits the pen? Imagine still doing those. Those aren't even healthy, and like... Let alone if you're gonna do that shit, just stick to the good old... stick to the blunt itself, you know what I'm saying? Don't do that shit, bro. Chemicals, all that weird dog shit. I know you can get that off the street, but like...
He knows this is going to get painful, as just touching it with his penknife causes immense pain. He grits it and cuts through the nerves. He's free. He somehow begins staggering across the desert when he is spotted by a family. A helicopter arrives, and after 127 hours since the accident, Aaron is safe.
Number 1.
In the summer of 2005, Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell...
People are like, Laser, how long do you do these videos for? Nobody says that, by the way. I'm gonna do it till I die, man. And I think if you do what you love, then there's a better chance you succeed at it. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. It looks like fucking... Is that Ronaldo, bro? Ronaldo, you on the... You switched teams? Literally? You switched 9 teams, you switched games, and then switched teams? You went from an amazing... you're my favorite water polo player. Did you score the game-winning... Did you win the Stanley Cup in water polo?
And his 3 companions, Axe, Mike and Danny, were dropped into the Hindu Kush of central Afghanistan. Their duty was to carry out surveillance on a group of buildings used by the local Taliban commander. During their ascent up a mountain, they stumbled across a small group of Afghan goat herders. Not knowing if they were local civilians or Taliban, they decided to let them go. This was the mistake that changed their lives forever. They were Taliban and quickly reported the SEALs to other Taliban members. A few hours later, the team entered a small area that had high grounds on 3 sides, a perfect location for the Taliban to attack.
Why do fucking military photos, bro? Or just like any like army or like just like meet up always go so damn like, fuck, they go hard. We got my boy holding his gun. That's a big sucker.
Moments later, some 100 Taliban fighters were aiming down at the team, armed with machine guns, assault rifles, RPGs and mortars. All havoc began taking place. It was 100 versus 4, and there was a sheer drop.
People are like, why do you keep doing that with your lips? There's like something stuck on it, literally. Like, y'all ever just do that when there's like something stuck on your fucking lips? Horrible.
Drop behind the team. They had no choice but to take the fall. They all hit the ground hard. One soldier, Danny, was shot twice. He heroically continued to fight but was shot a 3rd time in the throat and then the face. 4 had become 3. Thousands of bullets rained down on them. Mike took a shot in the chest and an axe in the head, but they continued to fight. Mike Murphy knew in order to call for backup he needed to go out into the open and get a signal. He ran out into the open ground and called for backup. He managed to call them, but he was shot dead moments later.
Y'all saw that one video years ago? It was like trending on YouTube. That fucking soldier that got shot in like the helmet. He had the GoPro, everything. I'm sure y'all seen that video. It actually was pretty viral. And then I remember like the people in the comments were saying shit like he had goddamn helmets or armor, right? You're telling me if I don't have a helmet, if someone takes a bud and puts it in my head won't go.
Axe was now dying fast, and after their 2-hour firefight, Marcus was on his own. Axe's last words to him were stay alive, and that's exactly what he would do. An RPG came crashing down on Marcus. He was knocked unconscious and blasted over the edge of a ravine. He awoke upside down with a broken nose, broken shoulder, and a broken back. An American Army Chinook helicopter flew overhead. This was Marcus's ticket out of here, but the helicopter was shot down by the Taliban, killing all members on board. Marcus was completely alone with no sign of backup. He could barely even crawl, and the Taliban were hunting him. He was so thirsty that his tongue had stuck to the roof of his mouth. A shot rang out. Marcus was hit in the leg by a Taliban sniper. The force knocked him back down the mountain which he had been crawling up.
I need a girlfriend, bro. Can someone just text me, say, Laser, I love your videos. They get me in a whole ass erection. Show me the way. Show me the way. You just know I make. I already said this. I make like. I'm way ahead of the game, bro. I'm like nobody's doing content creation. So slept on. Look at the doggy, by the way. Look at the doggy. Who needs a girlfriend actually when you have a doggy as your pet? I didn't mean it like that. That's weird. But I love dogs. I literally have this exact dog in my house. It's a fucking golden lab.
Up the past few hours, 3 Taliban soldiers caught up with him, but he managed to shoot the one and throw a grenade at the other 2. He continued to crawl for hours when.
I need a girlfriend now. Come on, ladies. Just send me a text. I'll give you my just my YouTube plaque. Is that enough for you? That's gotta be like the biggest, probably like one of the biggest flexes I have, bro. And I got that from making those aesthetic TikTok videos. Back when I there was like a whole era of me just doing this with my finger. Might as well just stick it up someone's asshole at that point.
When all of a sudden he could see 3 Afghan men looking down at him. He was prepared for his final stand, but these were not Taliban. They were local civilians who helped Marcus. Against all the odds, he decided to trust them. He was carried to a village where the local civilians had no time for the Taliban. There was an American base camp 40 miles away, but Marcus knew he couldn't make it there. Amazingly, one of the locals volunteered to make the journey and alerted the American troops of Marcus's whereabouts. Marcus was rescued and returned home a hero. If it wasn't for the kindness of those civilians and the heroic bravery of his team, Marcus would have surely died that day. So that's it for 5 incredible survival stories.
Well guys, if this video enjoyed it, which one has unbelievable survival stories with some nice interesting reaction content, you want to scary if you didn't do. I'll see you next one. Peace.